All right, welcome back. We kick off with what the dailies are holding for you this Tuesday morning. Just a quick look on what the People Daily is having for you. Ideally, matters to do with subsidies take center stage in this particular daily. Remember that the president really talked about that, scrapped off the fuel, fertilizer subsidies. But this is just also what the Central Bank of Kenya governor said yesterday while addressing members of parliament, particularly members of the National Assembly, and he actually intimated that the risks that this particular subsidies lead to. Just quickly highlighting one of those things that he talked about, he says that subsidies should be provided only for a short-term period as they distort the market. That is what he says. So there's nothing wrong with subsidies, but need not to be for the long term, only just for a short-term period. Away from that, from hats to brooches, guests were quite in the tributes to the monarch, just showing or indicating that the Queen Elizabeth II was a master of symbolic dressing, using clothes, colors, hats and jewels to communicate with the subjects. And also oftentimes you've been told that at how, you know, the bag or the purse that she used to carry, you know, what it indicated. Anytime it was put down, when she would swing it, when she would put it on the laps, all that, what it would indicate. And yesterday it was also a time for the family members as well as the various other dignitaries who showed up to equally do the same in honor of how she will dress while she was still alive. Away from that, now lawmakers open new war with SRC over allowances. We've equally had this particular story on the GMK news brief, just talking about how the National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula is now pushing for the return or reinstatement, I should say, of the allowances that was scrapped off in May by SRC. This is the sitting as well as the mileage allowances. Remember that the National Assembly sits 4 times a week, the Senate 3 times, and this is the 5,000 allowances which was scrapped by SRC. That was last year in May. In fact, those that were lauding the move by SRC were equally asking that when you look at the members of parliament roles, including legislation, oversight and representation, and that's ideally what they're paid for. So then again, why would you need allowances on top of exactly what they're being paid to do? But we wait to see how that would pan out. Remember that also that was one of those key issues that was being talked about in the event that the 13th parliament would sit, to just see how they're going to navigate the issue of allowances. And lastly, the NSSF Act of 2013 is unconstitutional. That is what the High Court declared. This is an issue that began, sort of way back, I should say, with the NSSF Act that had made provisions or the recommendation to increase that to 1,080. Also, the president then, while the deputy president had equally lauded that particular move. And you can remember what he also said during the parliamentary group meeting over the weekend while addressing members of Kenya Kwanza, is that, just talking about 200 being contributed, is that even saving at all if you're talking about saving to the NSSF fund? But it looks like that particular act, by what was recommended rather in that particular act, has now been declared unconstitutional. And basically what the High Court judges mentioned as part of why they declared it unconstitutional is that the failure of Parliament to refer this particular bill to the Senate prior to enactment is largely what made them to declare it unconstitutional. Jane.
Now, let me take you through the Daily Nation, and starting with the story that has been covered here on the back. In regards to the story that you just touched on, Doreen, concerning MPs wanting the plenary seating allowances back. So just to add on to that, going back to the reason as to why SRC scraped off this particular allowance was because if this allowance was still in place, the members of parliament would earn more than the Court of Appeal judges, who are superior in the pay grade, and this is not something that they wanted. However, now members of parliament are pushing to have this particular allowance reinstated, and consequently they will be earning more than judges of the Court of Appeal. So you can read more of that particular story here on the back page of the Daily Nation, but on the front page, It's just concerning the burial of the Queen that happened yesterday, titled End of an Era, where Britain got to say the last goodbyes to Queen Elizabeth II as she was laid to rest in what has been termed a historic funeral, a funeral that brought together not just global leaders but also the global population to pay their last respects to Queen Elizabeth II as she was laid to rest. She was buried alongside her father, King George VI, her mother, Queen Elizabeth, and her sister, Princess Margaret. And some of the rites that happened yesterday in honor of Queen Elizabeth II was the church's tenor bell that was tolled 96 times in 1-minute intervals in honor of every year that she lived. So that story has been covered here. You can also get to read more of it, and that basically is what the Daily Nation has for us on the front page and on the back page. Victor.
Very quickly, on the front page of the Star newspaper, State House spent 4 million shillings daily. That is according to the report here. State House spent 4 million shillings. That's according to control of budget. Much of the money involved campaigning for Azimio presidential candidate Raila Odinga. President's spending skyrocketed as he hosted political meetings. That is on the front page. And we talked about that interesting picture of heads of state in London, and it's been captured on a full page here on the front page of the Star newspaper. We have got our very own President William Ruto smiling at what we used to kula nyuma locally, uko nyuma, all right?
Backbench.
Backbench. Something we all used to hear in Nairobi, and it seems that he was having all fun in London. So that was happening. Overseas, UDM falls Azimio listing as majority debate rages. Both sides have unveiled names of majority positions, and now it's a battle for numbers in the National Assembly. 3 more bodies retrieved from River Yala this month. Haki Africa says that bodies found near same spot, over 30 others were found early this year. And now the bodies were taken to Yala Sub-County mortuary awaiting autopsy, but so far no arrest has been made as to what happened. Uhuru spent 4 million shillings for 12 months at State House. This means that State House spent an average of 4 million shillings daily on hospitality in 2022. Much of it involved campaigning for Azimio presidential candidate Raila Odinga. The control of budget report shows that State House budget shot up as executive spending on non-essential soared. That is what's on the government here as per the control of budget. And Kenyatta team left 49 billion shillings MDAs pending bills. You can take a look at that story. It's broken down there for you in terms of salaries, domestic travel, foreign travel, etc, etc. And finally, Raila settles down for opposition role. President William Ruto is planning to fully resource the office in the coming months. And remember, this has been a debate on whether to actually recognize the office of the opposition and give it full powers to operate independently. And now Azimio leader Raila Odinga has opted to settle down as the country's opposition leader after last month's presidential loss to William Ruto. It has emerged that President Ruto's administration is planning to amend the law to establish the office of the leader of the official opposition with state funding. I think that's where we leave it at now. Regina.
Well, the front page of the Standard this morning is all about a farewell like no other. This was also televised on our screens there. Queen Elizabeth II, a very detailed funeral service there. Hours long walks, 142 sailors pulling the courage, and the 96-year-old was laid to rest next to her husband, that is Prince Philip. That's the front page all the way to page 8. Actually, not 8, 10. And it ends in page 12. Finally at rest. Red roses from the royal garden accompanying the Queen. Now back to local matters. The question is, who is going to succeed National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula in Bungoma, and this is pitting Ford Kenya allied members of parliament as well as UDA allied members of parliament. And the argument is the UDA party of President William Ruto has backed the former Bumula MP Mwambu Maboga, which has irritated Ford Kenya leaders. Wafula Wakwoli, Wetangula's long-serving personal assistant, is being supported by Ford Kenya. On one end, Ford Kenya is arguing that this is a seat that Ford Kenya fought for, a single seat for Senate, and they are going to be guarding it with everything, and they're going for that particular position. On the other hand, UDA allied members of parliament are arguing that Ford Kenya should just listen to what the president has said in regard to that matter. We will be keeping tabs on what happens down in Bungoma. That is in as far as matters of local politics are concerned, without focus with what is happening, the induction that is happening among parliamentarians there. With what has come out is that Speaker Wetangula there says that he has had a conversation with the SRC to restore the lawmakers' parks. We are open to your feedback. You can get us on Twitter on KBC Channel 1. What is your take in regard to that particular move by members of parliament to want the parks restored? Now, the SRC scrapped sitting allowances of MPs, 5 million car grant and transport mileage. And now the Speaker yesterday assured that nobody should interfere with the MPs' entitlement and facilitate their work. What is your take in regard to that? Looking at where we are in as far as the economy is concerned, everyone is tightening up their belt. Is it justified to have these packs reinstated? We welcome your feedback. You can get us on Twitter on KBC Channel 1. That is our Twitter handle. Also, when it comes to matters of local tourism, now the Tourism Professional Association has welcomed the proposal and the move to have Ruto president has called for etiquette lessons, and the TPA has welcomed that move, saying as hospitality professionals we take pride that others will be trained to appreciate the little things in our trade. Now, our proposal at TPA is that tourism and hospitality be included in the ongoing curriculum reforms and discussions so that young people can also develop an interest in pursuing tourism and hospitality courses as a career choice. So members of the president's administration are to go for some etiquette lessons that will provide a good opportunity to have everyone trained in hospitality, mannerism and etiquette. We'll be keeping tabs on that. At the same time, we have information that the president is going to be giving an address, or rather is leading a delegation to UNGA there. That is a UN General Assembly there. We're waiting to get further details as to when he would actually be addressing delegates who are participating in that international feat. It is a wrap in as far as matters in the headlines are concerned. Remember, we invite you to give a feedback on Twitter as well as visit our very active website, that is www.kbc.co.ke. I hand you, or I leave you in the able hands of Victor Ulo to put matters of politics into perspective.
World leaders are gathering in New York.